Dictation 12. Ready? The opposition of instinct and reason is mainly illusory. Instinct, intuition, or insight is what first leads to the beliefs, which subsequent reason confirms or confutes. But the confirmation where it is possible consists in the last analysis of agreement with other beliefs, no less instinctive. Reason is a harmonizing, controlling force rather than a creative one. Even in the most purely logical realm, it is insight that first arrives at what is new. Where instinct and reason do sometimes conflict is in regard to single beliefs, held instinctively, and held with such determination that no degree of inconsistency with other beliefs leads to their abandonment. Instinct, like all human faculties, is liable to error. Those in whom reason is weak are often unwilling to admit this as regards themselves, though all admit it in regard to others. Where instinct is least liable to error is in practical matters, as to which right judgment is a help to survival, friendship, and hostility in others. For instance, are often felt with extraordinary discrimination through very careful disguise. But even in such matters, a wrong impression may be given by reserve or flattery, and in matters less directly practical, such an philosophy deals with very strong instinctive beliefs are sometimes wholly mistaken, as we may come to know through their perceived inconsistency with other equally strong beliefs. It is such considerations that necessitate the harmonizing meditation of reason, which tests out beliefs by their mutual capability and examines, in doubtful cases, the possible sources of error on the one side and on the other. It is there is no opposition to instinct as a whole, but only to blind reliance upon some one interesting aspect of instinct to the exclusion of other more commonplace but not less trustworthy aspects. It is such one sidedness, not instinct itself, that reason aims at correcting. These more or less trite maxims may be illustrated by application to Bergson's advocacy of intuition as against intellect. There are, he says, two profoundly different ways of knowing a thing. The first implies that we move round the object, the second that we enter into it. The first depends on the point of view at which we are placed and on the symbols by which we are express ourselves. The second neither depends on a point of view nor relies on any symbol. In those cases where it is possible to attain the absolute, the second of these in those cases where it is possible to attain the absolute, the second of these, which is intuition, he says, the kind of intellectual sympathy by which one places oneself within an object in order to coincide with what is unique in it and therefore inexpressible. In illustration, he mentions self knowledge. There is one reality at least which we are sees from within by intuition and not by simple analysis. It is our own personality in its flowing through time, our self which endures. The rest of Bergson's philosophy consists in reporting, through the imperfect medium of words, the knowledge gained by intuition and the other consequent complete condemnation of all the pretended knowledge derived from science and common sense. This procedure, since it takes sides in a conflict of indistinctive beliefs, stands in need of justification by providing the greater trustworthiness of the beliefs on one side than of those on the other. Bergson's attempts this justification in two ways. First, by explaining that intellect is a purely practical faculty to secure biological success. Secondly, by mentioning remarkable feats of instinct in animals and by pointing out characteristics of the world which, though intuition can apprehend them, are baffling to intellect as he interprets it. Of Bergson's theory that intellect is a purely practical faculty developed in the struggle for survival and not a secure of true beliefs, we may say first that it is only through intellect that we know of the struggle for survival and of the biological ancestry of man. If the intellect is misleading, the whole of this merely inferred history is presumably untrue. If, on the other hand, we agree with him in thinking that evolution took place as Darwin believed, then it is not only intellect but all our faculties that have been developed under the stress of practical utility. Intuition is seen at its best where it is directly useful. For example, in regard to other people's characters and dispositions. Bergson apparently holds that capacity for this kind of knowledge is less applicable by the struggle for existence than, for example, capacity for pure mathematics. Yet, the savage deceived by false friendship is likely to pay for his mistake with his life, whereas even in the most civilized societies, men are not put to death for mathematical incompetence. All the most striking of his instances of intuition in animals have a very direct survival value. The fact is, of course, that both intuition and intellect have been developed because they are useful and that speaking broadly, they are useful when they give truth and become harmful when they give falsehood. Intellect in civilized man, like artistic capacity, has occasionally been developed beyond the point where it is useful to the individual. Intuition, on the other hand, seems on the whole to diminish as civilization increases. It is greater as a rule in children than in adults, in the uneducated than in the educated. Probably in dogs it exceeds anything to be found in human beings. But those who see in these facts a recommendation of intuition ought to return to running wild in the woods, dyeing themselves with wood and living on hips and haws. Let us next examine whether intuition possesses any such infallibility as Bergson claims for it. The best instance of it, according to him, is our acquaintance with ourselves. Yet self knowledge is proverbially rare and difficult. Most men, for example, have in their nature meanness, vanities, and envies, of which they are quite unconscious, though even their best friends can perceive them without any difficulty. It is true that intuition has a convincingness which is lacking to intellect, while it present it almost impossible to doubt its truth. But if it should appear on the examination to be at least as fallible as intellect, its greater subjective certainty becomes a demerit, making it only the more irresistibly deceptive. Finished.